Until 2.5 years ago, I was an entrepreneur, co-founder, CEO of 5min Media, which was the largest syndication platform for online video. We got acquired by AOL 2.5 years ago. And now I run video for AOL. And basically, I think the main differentiation that AOL has right now in the digital place is that we're not only trying to grow our platforms, we're also heavily embedded with content partners and syndication platforms, and we're trying to kind of be the content exchange that helps publishers to get content from amazing folks like the people we have here, and also for content creators to be able to increase their distribution and find new audiences, not necessarily in their own platforms. So the strategy that we've implemented allowed us to have less than half of our inventory of our video views inside AOL. And depending on the month, we're usually in video views second to YouTube or third after Hulu. And I think that's really the three big syndication kind of platforms that we're seeing online right now. So before we start and I introduce everyone, I'd be really happy to know who the audience here, so we can know who we talk to. So how many people here create content? All right, a lot. Publishers? And marketers, advertisers? All right, so we can be honest. We don't need to sell. So I have three amazing content creators here that I work with for a while. So Lisa Wax is the VP of video for Scripps Networks, all of the brands. Lisa Valentino is the SVP of multimedia sales for ESPN, basically head of sales for all digital. And Gabe Sauerhoff is the VP of digital media distribution for Discovery. So we really have three legacy brands here that are now tapping their hands, I can say pretty heavily in digital. So I'd be happy if three of you would introduce yourself and the strategy that you're leading for your companies.
So, hi everyone, I'm Lisa Wax. This is going to be easy, Lisa and Lisa. I'm Lisa Wax, and at Scripps, as Ron mentioned, we've been working in the digital video landscape for, I would say, around 5 years now. And it's interesting, timing is everything, I guess, because we've actually, we're taking the next step, and literally we're actually going to be launching in 3 weeks a video portal. To kind of be this video optimized environment in addition to our current distribution partners and some new ones that we'll have on the horizon. And I think what we've seen, in both full episode and short form, is that there is that appetite for consumption of that content, really kind of many devices, many environments.
I'm Lisa Valentino. Nice to meet you. I think ESPN's core business is built on a video proposition. So it's something that we've been in since the company launched over 30 years ago. We, are pretty aggressive in our desire to fulfill fans' appetites every day, 24/7 around the world. And live sports is really the lens in which we serve our fans. Obviously, we have a pretty significant highlights and analysis business in brands like SportsCenter and some of our other brands. And clearly, from a digital perspective, live and highlights, are really at the core of our proposition. So it really is not about a digital screen or a television screen. I don't think there's any such thing as a legacy medium. All media is new. My television is as progressive as my smartphone. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity for our companies and for new content creators out there. So, I don't know if that's me or.
I don't know.
Okay.
Gabe.
Yes. Was it me? No, we're good? All right. That means it was Lisa, the other Lisa. Happy to be here. My name is Gabe Sauerhoff. I handle digital distribution at Discovery, which basically means I work with a multitude of different online distribution partners or partners that somehow use the internet to distribute our content and to get it into the hands of users in new and different ways. At Discovery, I agree with obviously what these guys said. I think we're all sort of cable network groups with a history in the same underlying business. I think one of the things that we're focused on at Discovery is really extending and recreating the definition of content, right? So for many, many years, the definition of content sort of was content that debuted on the television screen in a traditional linear environment, and then perhaps porting that over to other platforms, maybe in a short form basis, via clips on YouTube or what have you, taking our TV programs and putting them on in clip form, for example, on different platforms. What we're focused on now, we're focused on a lot of different things, but one of the major things we're focused on now is sort of creating new IP, creating new content that is native for the online platforms. So we purchased a company called Revision 3 a number of months ago, about a year ago now, whose business really was to create web original content and to do that with a different cost structure that's inherent in the online world, to do it with a different tone, to do it with a different voice, to create new brands. We're really excited about that, and it's really paying dividends for us to sort of expand what we've always tried to be at Discovery is the leader in nonfiction, right? To be the #1 nonfiction media company in the world, and sort of what that means and what the definition of that type of content is changing. And like I said, there's a ton of people online who are looking for a different experience, not just sort of not just a TV show that's brought over to an online platform. So we're really excited by the opportunity to create new brands and to create new stories online that are made for the online platform.
So 2 weeks ago, we had our new fronts, and for us it was a big celebration. AOL launched 15 new shows in 15 new channels. The press was really rooting for digital. It was kind of fun. And there was a lot of statesmen around, this is exactly what happened in cables 15 years ago, we're filling it. I don't think that from a scale perspective we're still there, but definitely there's a notion that this is coming. So I want to ask you first, you work in TV native companies where you represent a small amount of the revenue stream of the big beast. How do your companies look at digital video? Like, is that a threat? Is that an opportunity? Is that important? I know you would give me some color on how TV companies look at this new beast.
So the way, I guess at Scripps, the thing we like to say is it's disruption from within. So we don't completely tip over the apple cart. But again, I think what Gabe had just mentioned is that there's a different appetite a little bit in terms of really speaking to digitally native content, and could they coexist peacefully? And can we take and apply certain metadata and append it to the already existing TV programming and have it resonate with the digital audience? And I think that, again, inside Scripps is that presenting it that way and looking at it that way is all boats rise. So you're creating an opportunity to kind of have this multi-screen opportunity because, and you had mentioned this, is that if, you're sitting and you're watching your TV, your 2-, 3-year-old or 4-year-old sitting on an iPad and so there's multi-screen things going on. There's also a different generation that really doesn't care where they're consuming that content. So, creating those opportunities to take and have that live seamlessly in all of those, I think is really the key from our standpoint.
We had our version of the New Front last week on Tuesday, which is, I guess, the legacy upfront week. I'm not going to let you live that one down, but it's interesting, and I also went to some of the broadcast upfronts as well. And the challenge is when you look at how consumers are behaving, right? Media behaviors have fundamentally changed. And I think, to your point, Lisa, my 3-year-old and my 1.5-year-old have their own iPad, and it is distinctly theirs, and it's programmed personally for them, and they get really, pissed off if mom takes their stuff. So, I think acknowledging that the world has changed, that there's room for many players. The reality, I think, though, to the new fronts is our marketers have major problems that they're facing, and depending on the category, will dictate how grave some of those situations are. And so they need business partners that can provide scalable solutions. So to me, it's about, we think about a video-centric approach to sports, regardless of the screen. Actually, we're getting more usage from devices like Xbox than anything else right now. And so how do you continue to drive a value proposition around scale? So it's really expensive, as I'm sure AOL is finding out and others, to be in the content business. So I think it really is a matter of understanding where you're going to focus, where you're going to prioritize, where there's opportunity to identify new and engaging audiences. For us, we just launched a business around women, ESPNW, which is a very small business today. We think has a lot of potential, as there are clearly women involved and engaged in the sports marketplace, as just one example. How do you invest? How do you build programming? A lot of that doesn't have to be as produced as the 6 p.m. Sports Center. So there's many different ways, I think, that we can attract audiences, but it is about figuring out which ones are going to drive the most amount of scale. Even if it's scale within a niche group of individuals, but it's got to be meaningful. Otherwise, I worry that some of the folks at the new fronts, how do you make a business out of that?
I always say that if the media business was a religion, God was scale, so.
Yeah, well, I guess the new fronts are really interesting development. I mean, I would say I'd look at it kind of my role is really to focus on distributing our content in smart ways and getting it into the hands of end users to be viewed, consumed, what have you. And so I look at the new fronts as fundamentally a net positive, because it means basically that more and more companies have a meaningful stake in the video ecosystem. More and more companies view it as a core part of their business, which ultimately for me, in terms of trying to get my content into the hands of, to Ron's point, to Lisa's point about scale, in as many to as many eyeballs as possible, that's a good thing. Having more people knocking on my door saying, I'm interested in this kind of content, or I think one of the interesting developments is, as you see, certainly many more announcements publicly about, the original content efforts that different platforms are investing in. I mean, even 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, that you just didn't see that to the same degree. And so ultimately, that is a net positive for the video business insofar as it just means more people are interested in it, more people want it, and that creates a vibrant marketplace where owning your content, owning the brands, being able to tell stories in these manners and on these platforms with in a customized way means that you have opportunities to monetize your content. You have new and different ways of connecting to your audience, and those connections are really meaningful. I mean, for us, digital presents a great way to continue the storytelling experience outside of the 12 to 20 weeks of a season running on television, right? And so we can make a show live, and a TV show that airs on one of our linear networks, TLC, for example, Discovery Channel. We can make that show live for a much longer time with an online experience, by either on our own properties, right, on our own websites and apps, or by working with great brands like AOL and others to distribute that content. So that's the way I'd look at the upfronts.
So I'll try to tease you a little bit. Here's what I think happened in digital. There's a crazy fragmentation. By the way, I think fragmentation killed the old music business models. It killed the old print business models. I think video is a much more difficult medium to create than audio only and text only, and therefore I don't think you're going to see such a full-scale disruption. But what's interesting online is that, and actually we founded our startup against that assumption, was that you have fragmentation of production. Like many more people, I'm sure in the audience, feel that they can produce really good content. And then there's also a real fragmentation of audiences. So when I look at all of your TV reach and I compare it to your digital reach, you're losing audience by definition. just because there's more competition. The bundle is not 300 channels, it's 100 million sites. Do you think that digitally you'll have to choose if you're a publisher or a content creator? And which leads me to syndication, meaning that would you, at the end of the day, you are a publisher on TV, you get all the audience, and you produce or vet and develop all the content. So you do both. Do you think that's a sustainable model for you guys online? Or would you at one point say, you know what, our content is much bigger than the audience I can create as a publisher, and therefore I'm just going to start expanding to other publishers? Or do you think you would maintain the model of being the publisher and the content creator on your platforms?
God, I hope so.
So go ahead, tell me why.
Well, first of all, I think that when it comes to live programming, it's not about losing audience from one screen to the other. Mm-hmm. So it really...
If you have the exclusive rights.
Yes, but it really is about access. So if the only way for you to watch a game is through your Samsung smartphone, that's going to be your screen. If you have the choice between, a phone or a 40-inch television, you're going to choose the television. But on a Saturday, in the college football season, not everybody has access to the four. So we're seeing that is a different behavior in sports than maybe, in entertainment programming, where I do a lot of DVRing and I just have a different behavior, right? So the FEPs may serve a different purpose than, say, some of our live platforms.
And to give you credit, I think seriously that you're the most advanced technology big company. Like you're first to most screens than everyone else I've seen.
I think that what we're finding digitally is that there's uniqueness to the audience. So the folks that are engaging with our video online and on phones is younger. It's a pure audience on the demo. A lot of engagement. So the average minute audience on a Sunday is as large off TV as on TV. Mm-hmm. So, there's some really interesting, you got to define scale. Is it about the number of people or is it about the amount of time they're spending? And we've chosen to spend a lot more time focused on average minute audience because we believe that is the purest proxy for engagement. And engagement is what really drives impact in terms of brand metrics, purchase metrics, et cetera.
Do you send content to YouTube?
We do syndicate content to YouTube. We syndicate, one of the biggest advancements we've made this year is with a clipper technology that allows us to take any footage that we own on television and distribute it within 7 seconds of it airing. So if you think about that in the power that can have in terms of an instant replay, in a game or a piece of analysis or a piece of breaking news, that we distribute through an alert, billions of alerts, through syndication, across mobile devices, across Xbox. That fuels the social conversation. So, we don't look at social as something that's distinct. We think about our video as fueling this enormous conversation that's trending every night of the week almost in the top position on Twitter. So how do we allow our marketers to take advantage of that? How do we take the video experience where some people want to watch a whole game, some people just want to watch the play 20 times over and over and over and be the influencer and send it to all their friends? How do we allow that experience to happen within a Twitter feed so that we're not taking people out of what they want to be a part of at that moment? We're being pretty aggressive in that space. On the mobile front, how do we continue to distribute our content that is appetizing to fans that maybe only have a couple of minutes versus online where they have an hour or so throughout the day? So, I think we've taken over the last 5 years a much more aggressive approach to distribution. Distribution, 10 years ago meant something very different to the Walt Disney Company than it does today.
So if I go to both of you, which we work with, full disclaimer, we syndicate content from Scripps and Discovery. I would actually say that from a content perspective, Lisa has a better positioning than most TV folks. Yeah. And would you guys like? Do you guys' future is in publishing or content creation or a combination?
I think for us, it's a little bit of a combination. I think that if you look at kind of our inherent categories within lifestyle, that it's fundamentally different than sports, which is a little bit more of that live kind of immediate call to action. If you look at our breadth of our library, it's very much evergreen content in terms of, does anybody ever get sick of watching Giada making a chicken dish? I mean, some of the women may say yes, some of the men probably don't think so. But I think that the nature of that is that we will continue to publish that. But again, we've also gotten into the business of really, we're looking to rounding out the categories and really make it more lifestyle oriented of parenting and wellness and kind of taking and creating more digitally native using digitally native talent and speaking to that kind of newer audience, getting more aligned with the Twitter and the social components that we've been somewhat limited to. I mean, we also have different restrictions with, our MSOs and stuff like that. But I think it's a little bit more of a combination for us.
Yeah, I guess I would take it as from an angle of, I think the question of I think one element of your question is sort of, hey, when you produce content, do you sort of, keep it on your own platforms and on your websites and maybe on your apps and what have you, or do you look at sort of broadening your distribution effort to platforms like AOL or platforms like YouTube or what have you? I think that's part of the question, right? And for us. We have felt and have the belief in this sort of online content world that on television you're one of, let's say, to use your analogy, one of 300 channels, right? On the internet you're one of billions of web pages, tens of billions of web pages, one of billions of websites, right? And so you're sort of an island on a medium of islands, right, online, unless you sort of try to create an interconnection between those by distributing your content on a multitude of different platforms in different ways and in different business models and what have you that make sense for each platform, but certainly getting your content out to a broader audience. We believe wholeheartedly in that, hence why I have a job, I guess, which is to distribute that content on other platforms. And that's really central to everything we do. I mean, if you look at several months ago, we launched a property called D News, which is really an evolution of a brand that's been around for quite some time online called Discovery News, where we would look at events in the natural world or what have you, not as a breaking news kind of way, but let's say there was an earthquake, or let's say there was some other occurrence in the world, where we would then a couple days later, after the breaking news has occurred, sort of dive deeper and say, well, what really led to this earthquake? What happened why now? What was the impact of it? What's going on here? And that property had been around in more of a text and a data capacity for a number of years, and we relaunched that property, or sort of extended that property to become really a video property called D News, where we're really, it's a sort of a pop science and news blog now. And when that network, if you will, in quotes, because it's an online network, when that network was launched, that collection of content was launched, it wasn't just launched on dnews.com or on discoverynews.com. It was launched on certainly there for your hardcore fans that might want to come to your own website, but it was also launched on YouTube. It was also launched on AOL. It was also launched in a multitude of other places. It was, so ultimately we believe that that's going to continue to be the future, and you've got to embrace that and try to find ways to create scale that works within these different environments.
How many of you content creators here upload content to YouTube? How many of you have someone that helps you monetize and rep you, and like makers and stuff? None. So here is one. Makers?
I'm sorry?
Makers or someone else?
Makers.
Makers. Yeah. So we have on one hand you guys that are creating probably the highest end. I would say not necessarily, I think, Revision 3. Like, I think you have digital folks that are doing a good job, but let's say the top end. And then Lisa, you talk about scale. So there's a trend right now. I think we're sitting in the middle of machinima, makers, Testmate, who just launched, and other people that are saying, you know what, there's great producers. We can produce everything. We're going to just aggregate and aggregate and aggregate and aggregate. We're going to rev share. And at the end, that's how we would disrupt your scale. We would just come, let's say, food. I haven't seen you guys starting to rep people around the internet, not only the three companies. Like, I haven't seen a TV company that has an approach of, you know what, this is great content. We're going to rep content around our vertical. Not in a net network manner, but more in a more curated manner. And the question I have for you, do you think that at one point, you're going to see companies like Makers, like Machinima, like others? By the way, we rep only professional content, but we're scaling extremely well by producing some and aggregating some. Do you think that at one point, creating all of your content and selling into all of your content is going to get threatened by huge aggregators? Is that something that you're going to see TV networks doing in the future, taking people in the audience and starting to approach them and aggregate them as a part of your big buy?
I mean, I think so to a certain degree, because I think that, you know, the rules of engagement have changed. I mean, there's not, you know, yes, we could represent the currently to date, collectively the best in our category. However, if you go to any of these places, you know, I'll speak from food standpoint. If you go to Tastemade and you look at kind of what they've pulled together and that they're, you know, providing all this opportunity to create all this content, you know, 5 out of the 10, 30, 40 series are going to be quality content. So I think that, you know, when you look at that, it's a good question. I don't know, I don't really know what the answer is personally, but I think it's interesting to keep your eye on those companies and to pay attention to what they're doing, because everything, you know, again, going back to the new fronts, everybody came out of the gate, everybody's in the TV business now. Everybody's making content. We're doing it over here, we're doing it over here. And does that mean, you know, going back to scale, who's going to consume it? Where is it going to show up? How does that really shake out? And do these TV companies like ours adapt to kind of get more in line with that, with the new rules of engagement?
And also, would data, let's say, you know, Lisa, you have tons of audience against sport. If someone comes with double the audience and not the level of content that you have, is that a threat or not? I'll put it that way.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot, the competition in the sports space is only growing. We have new entrants into the market, some of which are more traditional entrants and some are new. But I think I think it may be a different question to ask, because we spend a lot of time focused on controlling what we can control. And what we can control is the value and the experience that we create and provide for sports fans. So as long as we feel that we are 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of enticing the audience and understanding what our fans want, and it's not always rights, but you know, we just made an acquisition that we announced last week of the SEC network. Now that allows us a whole new identity in a localized, you know, a localized opportunity for sports, for college sports, and with that will come, you know, who should we be working with in terms of content creators? What brands? You know, we have Bill Simmons in our portfolio because we know that Bill has a connection to a pretty large audience and he has relevancy. And if it's some, you know, we'll continue to bring, you know, the right folks, the right amount of rights, the right amount of investment to fulfill on those. The promise of ESPN hasn't changed in 30 years. The investment behind technology and resource and content and personality that's all changed. But we still keep, our North Star is still the sports fan, it always will be. And if we do that right, I don't worry about the competition. They're there and they're very real. Trust me, we talk about them quite a bit, but I think we'll be okay.
Gabe, aggregation versus production, sharing revenues with emerging content creators.
Yeah, so I think that there is no doubt that because of the democratization in many ways of media that the internet has enabled, there are new stars that develop and new talent, frankly, that becomes known to a great number of people in a number of different categories. And so to the extent you are looking to distribute your content online as a traditional media company, or even as speaking from the Revision 3 part of our company that does develop these native talents and come up with native shows for this platform, you're going to be presented with the opportunity to say, oh wow, there's someone on YouTube in a category, in a content category that's somewhat similar to ours. Do we want to work with them, right? And so that's a question that we are presented with as a company quite often today. And I'd say that you've just got to filter it through the lens of, in other words, I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think there absolutely will be talent that and storytelling that you develop as a company natively, that is your IP, that you own, and that you are responsible for distributing, in a somewhat similar vein to the way that the TV model works today, right? Where we have, talent, we have shows that are on our air, and we own those shows. So I think that will happen, but it's got to be measured. I think it's got to reinforce the underlying method of storytelling that you're after. It's got to underline or sort of support the brands and the categories that you're interested in, and not just sort of be this shotgun approach where, oh my God, there's someone on YouTube who has 500,000 subscribers, and or what have you. Let's go after them. I don't think that's the model. I think it's got to be a more disciplined, filtered approach where brand really matters, the category of content you're trying to develop an audience in matters, and frankly the tone and the way that person or that group of people tell stories has got to mesh with the way you tell stories on your fully owned properties, if you will. So I think we're definitely going to see more of that, and we're already seeing it. I don't think it's going to be one model or the other.
Yeah. I, by the way, fully agree with curation. Like, I think that open platforms are not going to migrate TV dollars into digital, and we are religious about curation. I think we're more open into it I think most digital, like the reason that Yahoo and AOL and MSN are getting so big is because they are extremely open to other people's content, and I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen with TV. So
Ron, just to that point,
Yeah.
so one of the projects that we're unveiling this summer, which is not the core ESPN, but we are working with 9 female producers. We launched it at Tribeca Film Festival, 2 of them, we debuted them, but we're creating working with 9 female producers to tell 9 powerful stories about women in sports and how they've either overcome adversity rather, or just unbelievable stories, generational stories that Julie Foudy is one of the executive producers, Robin Roberts is one of the executive producers, and then we've got 9 producers that are not of that caliber that are doing shorts for us on the web. So they're produced at a different level. And it's amazing how the market has reacted to this. It's obviously under the ESPN brand umbrella, so it's going to have a certain level of production quality. It's going to air on ESPN and ABC, but to produce something like that was a pretty significant investment to do that.
Yeah.
And it'll be a great thing, and it'll hit on the hearts of a certain audience. But I still think about just the mechanics of producing high quality content.
I don't think it's the mechanics. I think it's the business model. You guys have money from MSOs we don't have yet, and then influences dramatically on the ability to invest in content.
But it shouldn't ever stop. What we don't want to stop is the innovation in the marketplace.
Sure.
And what we don't want traditional businesses to be a barrier for this is the only way great content or premium content works. And so that is not, we were the new media companies of a different generation. So I think that we constantly want to be doing things, and it sounds like you guys are doing it as well. We constantly want to be doing things and leveraging all of the innovation that's out there, both on the content side as well as on the technology side, to connect. We've got a project under X Games, which is all about a youth culture. And if you want to connect to the youth, it's not about the television screen. It's about music, it's about lifestyle, it's about skateboarding and a whole other aspect of sport that we're prepared to invest in, but it's not core for us. So we're learning a lot as we go.
I think I just wanted to add the other piece of that is that, from the technology and curation and this is, again, one of the things we're doing with the launch of this new portal is, reaching out to our partnerships, whether it be AOL, and a lot of other publishing partners out there, magazine content partnerships, digital native, and saying, look, you know what, this isn't a one-way street here. We're building something where we want you guys to be able to play in this space as well. So this Scripps version, which is you live, and to say, okay, third-party content providers, you have great quality content that adheres to our standards. Here's a premium environment that you could bring in as well. And it may be in any existing curated environment such as AOL.
But that's a huge change, because like 7 years ago, you would have never done that. So that's good.
Yeah, that and again, the technology aspect. We've invested in a technology company as well because, again, it's the data, it's the metadata behind it. But I think that, everything we're saying, it sounds like the traditional media companies, that the ones that are a little bit ahead of the curve, that we get it, and I think that we're taking the necessary steps, some quicker than others, but we're all turning the corner.
So one last, I'll ask the last question, and then hopefully we'll have time. Before that, I would just say we don't have advertisers here, so I wouldn't open it, but what we're seeing lately a lot is that the measurement side also is starting to hopefully merge. GRPs, I don't know how geeky I'm becoming here. Like the TV metrics are moving online, regardless of if they're better or not. I don't think that's the conversation.
I think we can all agree they're not.
Yeah, but we were the first digital company to say yes to GRPs because we think that eventually this business...
Standardization.
Yeah, you got to create standardization. So let me ask you the last question, and I'll be an entrepreneur for a second. So here's my best case scenario.
Even though you were the first digital company to come out and announce it? Okay.
My best case scenario. My best case scenario. I look at an iPad and I think about mobile before iOS, Android, and Windows 8, let's say. It was a hell. I don't know how many of you worked in the carriers had tons of power. You needed to close deals with the carriers. It wasn't global. And then Steve Jobs came, iOS, Google launched Android, and suddenly mobile became easy. It was standardized. Developers could go there and start innovate. So here's my wet dream. 2014. Tim Cook, Larry Page, doesn't matter. They come, and TV becomes an iPad. And I think it'll happen. I don't see, maybe not in 24. It's not yet.
No,
UI is too complicated. We have 12 connected TV integrations. It's 12 deals.
Yeah.
So we close deals with every manufacturer. Most of you guys cannot upload content to connected TVs. Is that the biggest risk ever to bundling, the way we know it? Meaning that HuffPost Live of AOL, you don't want CNN, you can just download HuffPost Live. There's what I call appification, meaning that instead of buying bundles, we're starting to use apps on TV, which risks your biggest ever business model. And
So
maybe
what's
it's even...
the dream, Ron? What's the dream?
The dream is that it happens. And my question is, do you think
ESPN
that...
dies? No.
No, ESPN, by the way,
Well
ESPN
done.
would have the biggest question of them all because ESPN can have an app and charge directly without an MSO.
Yeah.
And
You
then
and
ESPN
HBO.
actually would probably...
You and HBO will be fine.
All right, so talk to it if you're saying, of course, because I think that would be the biggest risk for the TV business as we know it. And my question is, do you think about it, and do you think that the bundle is getting risked when you guys can go solo directly to consumers and charge?
I mean, I think about it not as much as Ken Lowe, but Yeah, yeah, I think it's a risk. I think it's a reality. I think we've turned that corner, and I think that the writing's on the wall, and it's a function of, do we have enough leverage on the other side that it's not going to matter? And if that business falls apart, that we're not left in the dust. I mean, I think that it's cut as dry as that.
Would ESPN go directly to consumers?
No comment.
No comment.
I think that if I look at my kids' generation, and they're the 1 and the 3-year-olds, it's all about, I think brands are really important.
I agree.
I think that it's a model that's going to change over time. I think time is trying to define that and put a period on that is and I think it's really tough. I think that's going to take a very long time. However, we want to be a part of all of the technology changes that are happening. Mm-hmm. So when you turn on your connected TV or you swipe your iPad up onto your big screen, there's an ESPN experience there, because we know fans expect that. So we're already doing that. We're already producing applications for connected TVs. We're already, in conversations with connected TV companies like Apple and Google, and we hope and we believe and we see it real time, and we've renewed a lot of those deals in the last couple of years. We do believe that value proposition is strong.
The bundling.
For the foreseeable future, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But there is a change happening, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, HBO, I think, announced that they're
Yeah.
going to let people to buy their app only, which I thought was pretty ballsy.
Yeah, I agree.
We have time for 1 or 2 questions, so feel free.
Nobody's mentioned search engines in getting your message out.
In terms of discovery of content or in terms of buying traffic?
Discovery and then finding old stuff, like what's there.
Archives and such.
I think search engines still have a role in everything.
Absolutely. Incredible role, especially for companies that, have ownership of content.
Right.
I mean, all of us have libraries and libraries of unbelievable content that, and we spend quite a bit of time and resource on SEO for that reason. The old stuff as well as the new stuff. There's a lot of tricks going on, and how some of these new media companies are using SEO with not a lot of muscle or content behind what they're, quote unquote producing, and they're kind of tricking the system. So I absolutely think search is critical now and going forward.
Don't you think Google got better in spotting these guys?
Some of them, yeah.
No comment.
Some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so baked into our core business that, maybe it's almost an afterthought, because it's just part of the business plan, right? It's just part of how we continue to build our businesses and move forward. It's been that way for some time. So, for me, it's almost like, okay, that's just part of the checklist.
More questions?
Is there a distinction for you guys between captioning for search and captioning for 508 compliance, and how will the new FCC rules affect you in the next 6 months?
That's a good question.
Boy, yeah, I mean, it's not my direct area of expertise. I mean, it's already affecting us. We're delivering to a number of partners content that is fully closed caption for online consumption. When you're talking about full episodes on certain platforms and whatnot, so it's absolutely impacting us. Every deal that is applicable to that world, we have to think through that, and we have to incorporate that into what we're delivering to partners or what we're making available ourselves. I'd say that it all just kind of goes back to the importance of metadata, which isn't at all a popular. It really goes to your question as well on search engine optimization. I mean, you could have the greatest content in the world, but if the metadata really isn't up to par, it's going to be hard. It's not going to maximize its audience, and so. we're really focused on that and making sure that we sort of adapt ourselves to this new world where you can't rely on a visual sort of 10, 15, 20 second, maybe a minute or two, someone actually giving your program a chance. Maybe you have to rely on literally a description of the program. That's a new form of marketing, and that's a really important form of marketing that we're seeing. One other element of kind of the online world and how you develop audiences, in addition to metadata and whatnot, is certainly audience development. I mean, what we're doing on sites like YouTube and whatnot to seed content and to actually go in with talent and respond to people's comments on a comment board, things like that, to really have people feel like it's a two-way conversation as opposed to just the big media company or the show producer sort of speaking at you, making it more of a conversation. So these are all ways in the newer world of that's enabled by the internet in terms of content consumption for you to get your content in front of as many people as possible and consumed by as many people as possible.
I want to thank the three of you, really, for coming in. Thank you, everyone. I think that